Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Sri Bhagavan and Grace by Sri V. Ganesan. Let me start with a quote from Arunachala Ramana Maharshi. பற்றிமால் விடம்தலை உற்றிரு முன்னம் அருள் பற்றிட அருள்புரி அருணாச்சலா. Grant me your grace before the poison of delusion, ignorance, grips me and rising to my head kills me. O Arunachala. Sri Bhagavan says, grace is ever existing, ever flowing. While adoring Arunachala, he says, ocean of nectar, full of grace. Grace is the self. You are never out of its operation. Grace is always there. Bhagavan identifies grace with Guru. Grace as Guru within pulls you, while grace as Guru without pushes you within into the self. The transformation of the seeker into an adept is done by this operation of grace, both from within and from without. Sri Bhagavan says the highest form of grace is silence. It is also the highest Upadesha. Sri Bhagavan asserts grace is within every human being. It is the state of true being, true awareness, devoid of otherness. It is the self. Let us see how Sri Bhagavan deals with this grace in his written works. In 5 hymns to Arunachala, Sri Bhagavan uses profusely the word grace, Arul, and describes it in 20 different ways. Particularly in Aksharamanamali, he has used the word Arul, grace, 59 times. In Navamanimala, thrice. In Padikam, 5 times. In Ashtakam, twice. And in Arunachala Pancharatna and Arunachala Mahatmyam, once each. Grace is obviously everything for him in the devotional hymns spontaneously written by him on the hill Arunachala. Strangely, when we come to his philosophic treatise like Upadesha Undiyar and Ulladu Narpadu, he has not used the word Arul even once. Does it mean that there is any conflict between Bhakti of the 5 hymns and Jnana of Upadesha Undiyar and Ulladu Narpadu? What are the key words in these two seemingly different variant texts? In the Bhakti Grantha, it is Anbu Arul, that is love and grace. And in the Jnana Grantha, it is Ulladu Unarvu, that is being and awareness. What do these 4 words mean? Love and grace seem to belong to the warm realm of emotion and duality, while being and awareness belong to bright realm of non-duality. At the superficial level, the 2 worlds seem to differ. The Guru is like the mother. Guru's grace is like a hand extended to help you out of water, or it makes your way easier for the removal of ignorance, Sri Bhagavan says. Also, Sri Bhagavan explains clearly, grace is necessary for the removal of ignorance. But grace is all along there. Grace is the self. It is not something to be acquired. All that is necessary is to know its existence. Bhagavan gives the master key to obtain grace. Surrender. Self-surrender is that key. The sense of duality which doubts and demands proofs is stilled. The doubter, the mischief maker, slowly disappears. In surrender, the mind which doubts is dissolved, as in mother's lap. Surrender will make one understand the grace. That which is only grace. There is nothing else. Grace is both beginning and the end. Introversion is due to grace. Perseverance is grace. Realization is grace. Sri Bhagavan quotes Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, only surrender to me. If one has entirely surrendered oneself, is there any part left to ask for grace? He is swallowed up by the grace. He further asserts, God, Guru and grace are really one and identical. O Bhagavan, Thy name is grace. Shower Thy grace on all of us. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Reading from Talks, 4th of June, 1937, talk number 420. A certain lawyer quoted as follows, "Neither the sun shines there, nor the moon, nor the stars, nor lightning. How can fire shine there? All these luminaries shine in his light only. With his light, all these shine forth." He asked, "What does with his light mean here? Does all else shine on account of him or in his light?" M. There is only he. He and his light are the same. There is no individual to perceive other things because the perceiver and the perceived are only he. The sun, the moon, etc. shine forth. How? Do they come and tell you that they shine forth? Or does another, apart from them, say that they shine forth? D. Of course, I say that they shine forth. M. Therefore, they shine on account of you. Again, consciousness is necessary to know that they shine forth. That consciousness is yourself or you. So then you or your consciousness is the same as he and his light, by which all else shines forth. D. Is that light like sunlight? M. No, the sunlight is jada, insentient. You are aware of it. It makes objects perceptible and chases away darkness, whereas consciousness is that light which makes not only light but also darkness perceptible. Darkness cannot exist before sunlight, but it can remain in the light of consciousness. Similarly, this consciousness is pure knowledge, in which both knowledge and ignorance shine. D. If God is all, why does the individual suffer for his actions? Are not the actions prompted by him for whom the individual is made to suffer? M. He who thinks he is the doer is also the sufferer. D. But the actions are prompted by God, and the individual is only his tool. M. This logic applies only when one suffers, but not when one rejoices. If the conviction prevails always, there will be no suffering either. D. When will the suffering cease? M. Not until individuality is lost. If both the good and bad actions are his, why should you think that the enjoyment and suffering are alone yours? He who does good or bad also enjoys pleasure or suffers pain. Leave it there and do not superimpose suffering on yourself. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
This text is from Ramana Maharshi Puranam, a testimony by Ganeshan about a lady devotee, Mrs. Eleanor Pauline Noyer. Bhagavan drew all kinds of seekers from across the world. To almost all of them whom I met, I would pose the same question: what made you come to Arunachala and to Bhagavan? They would generally reply, Somebody gave me an article about Bhagavan and Arunachala. That's how I came here. I would persist. It would dawn on them that it was not the printed word, but a higher power, call it Bhagavan or whatever else, that drew them to Arunachala. Every devotee who has been attracted to Bhagavan has been brought here by the same higher power that in 1896 drew Bhagavan himself to Arunachala. In 1939, Mrs. Noye was living in California with her twin sister when she went through a major crisis. Her suffering was so intense that though she was not well-to-do, she decided to travel around the world to find solace. Due to her very poor health, the doctor advised her not to travel. "Why do you want to travel in this condition?" the doctor asked. She answered, "I want to know myself." Quite prophetic, considering that the cardinal teaching of the master she was to meet was, "Find out who you are." When her ship reached Chennai, she disembarked. In a hotel there, she asked some of its workers if there was any living seer or saint they knew about. One of them immediately replied, "Yes, there is a sage called Ramana Maharshi in Arunachala. He is the greatest seer in India." The surprising thing was that the answer came from an ordinary worker in the hotel, not from a seeker nor a scholar. In 1939, the Maharshi was not that well known, yet he was described as the greatest seer in India. Mrs. Noye left at once for Arunachala. When she arrived at the ashram, Niranjanananda Swami, the Sarvadhikari, welcomed her and took her directly to Bhagavan. This is what she wrote. "I felt the atmosphere was filled with Bhagavan's purity and blessedness. One feels the breath of the divine in the sage's presence. When he smiled, it felt as though the gates of the divine were thrown open. I have never seen eyes more alight with divine illumination. He greeted me very tenderly and made some inquiries about me, which put me at ease, and his look of love and compassion made a benediction that went straight to my heart. He knew how much I needed him. I was immediately drawn to him. His greatness and kindness was all-embracing. His silent influence of love and light was more potent than words can ever be. Everyone who comes to him is blessed. The inner peace, which is his, is felt by all." From that moment till her taking leave of Bhagavan after 1 year, her eyes rarely stopped shedding tears. Bhagavan's attention on her was continuous and without a gap. The moment she came into his presence, he would turn his attention to her. Unbelievable, but true. Such a wonderful relationship is unique in the pages of the book of Ramana's life. Her pure, simple ways and her melting tears endeared her to all the old devotees as well. In the beginning, her tears were due to anguish, sorrow, and suffering. Later on, her tears were a spontaneous expression of inexplicable joy and spiritual fulfillment. After she met Bhagavan, she slept soundly for the first time in many years. From then on, the sleeping pills she had been taking were given up for good. She attributed it to the direct blessings of Bhagavan. When asked how she managed to do it, she replied, "I received the medicine of all medicines the unfailing grace of Bhagavan. Her answer echoes one of Bhagavan's poems in which he addresses Arunachala as the medicine of all medicines. After some months, she wanted to travel and see India before leaving for home. After a long tour of India, she returned. Bhagavan welcomed her with a glorious smile. Mrs. Noyer describes her experience of her second sojourn. My love blossomed into deep devotion, and I was filled with ineffaceable peace. The things which seemed so vital before were no longer of any importance. I could see things in their correct perspective. The heartaches of yesterday and the thoughts of tomorrow faded into insignificance and finally into complete oblivion. When she went back to her home in America, she used to stay in touch with Bhagavan through letters. Every time he read a letter from Mrs. Noyer, Bhagavan would be moved to tears, as she would have written in her letter, Bhagavan, I am writing you this letter with tears rolling down my cheeks. In those days, Indians traveled very rarely to America. But whenever a devotee informed Bhagavan about such a trip, he would instruct them, go and meet Noyer. After Bhagavan dropped his body, she wrote a letter in which she stated, Bhagavan, you have taken me to your heart. I am in your heart. This remarkable lady, who came to Bhagavan full of anguish, suffering and sorrow, successfully completed her spiritual journey through the unfoldment of Bhagavan's loving and compassionate grace.
The Path of Sri Ramana, Part 1. The Enquiry, Who am I? And the 4 Yogas. Let us suppose that a person is sitting alone in an absolutely dark room where he cannot see even his own body. If someone asks from outside the room, is my book near you? He replies, I do not know of its existence. But if asked, do you exist? Quick comes his reply, why? Certainly, I exist. He is able to know his own existence by his self-light, self-consciousness, even when he does not have the help of the light which is necessary to know the existence of second and third person objects. Moreover, since everyone has the experience of the knowledge I am, even in deep sleep, where the body and mind do not exist, it is evident that the knowledge of our own existence is inherent in us, whereas the knowledge of second and third person objects is not. These 2 examples prove that the experience of knowing jnana anubhava, one's own existence, is inherent even in the most ordinary man. If Sri Bhagavan advises us to like a thing for which we do not already have a liking, we may say it is difficult. If he asks us to know a thing so far unknown to us, we may then say it is difficult. If he wants us to be in a state which we have not reached before and thereby have not experienced before, then it may be considered difficult. But since we have come to know thus that the experiences of loving, of doing, and of knowing are already clear and inherent in us only with regard to the first person, when viewed in the light of the above mentioned definition of easy and difficult, one can plainly see that the effort made in the path of self-enquiry, which is an attention towards the first person, is far easier than that made in japa, dhyana, yoga, and so on, which are nothing but attention towards second and third person objects. Such indeed is the justification in support of the sayings of Sri Bhagavan. Of all paths, this path is the easiest, and this is the direct path for all. It was in this connection that Sri Bhagavan used to say repeatedly, self is here and now and ever attained. O Bhagavan, meditating upon you is nothing other than contemplating I. Contemplating I is nothing other than remaining without thought. Remaining without thought is nothing other than being vigilantly attentive not to rise as I. But why even attempt when my very existence, Sat, is itself attention, Chit? Sri Ramana Sahasram, verse 990.
From the introduction page, Arunachala Ramana, Boundless Ocean of Grace. Devotees make the journey to Tirunamala, walk into the ashram, enter the Samadhi hall, and feel immediately home and totally at peace. The picture of the ashramam and of the Maharshi are always in the mind of the devotee like the background curtain of a stage. Whenever they find that the world is too much with them, the wish to go to Ramanashramam possesses them like hunger. Even in their busiest hour, a sudden look at a picture of the Maharshi hanging on the wall momentarily roots them to the spot and the mind goes suddenly blank. Such was, such is, and such ever will be the Maharshi influence upon those who approach him with piety and devotion. Let the tempest rage, the ocean rise up, or the heart cake, the tree of knowledge rooted on Arunachala stands immutable. Many pilgrims on life's journey repose in its shade, and countless devotees like birds put forth their songs from its branches. This is indeed the kingdom of bliss. The Mountain Path, July 1968. Narayanan Iyer. One day when I was sitting by the side of Sri Bhagavan, I felt so miserable that I put the following question to him. Is the Sankalpa, wish, of the Jnani not capable of warding off the destinies of the devotees? Bhagavan smiled and said, does the Jnani have a Sankalpa at all? The Jivan Mukta can have no Sankalpas whatsoever. It's just impossible. I continued, then what is the fight of all of us who pray to you to have grace on us and save us? Will we not be benefited or saved by sitting in front of you or coming to you? What use is there than for family men like me to gain by coming here to you. Bhagavan turned graciously to me and said, just as a trouble or arrow that comes to destroy the head goes away, carrying with it only the turban, so a person's bad karma will be considerably reduced while he is in the presence of Jnani. A Jnani has no sankalpa, but his sanidhi presence is the most powerful force. He need not have sankalpa, but his presiding presence, the most powerful force, can do wonders, save souls, give peace of mind, even liberation to ripe souls. Your prayers are not answered by him, but absorbed by his presence. His presence saves you, wards off the karma and gives you the boons as the case may be involuntarily. The Jnani does save the devotees, but not by sankalpa, which is non-existent in him, only through his presiding presence, sanidhi. I was filled with joy. Even today, his presence is the most powerful thing, and that alone I am confident, says me. Extracted from a sadhu reminiscence of Ramana Maharshi. The power of Sri Ramana, who gave up his physical form, has not diminished. He is everywhere, like the light in a room shed by an electric bulb. But the light is found to be far stronger near the bulb, the source of light, than in any other part of the room, for no spot is in darkness. What wonder, then, if the power of our Guru is found near the place where his body is interred. Prof. K. Swaminathan, Arunachala Ramana, Volume 4. Gandhi's attitude to Ramana Maharshi can be judged from the fact that whenever someone in his circle, for example, Shankarlal Banker, Rajendra Prasad, or Jamnalal Bajaj, felt depressed or confused, he used to say, go to Ramana Ashramam and come back after a month, stay there. Usually they came back within a week or fortnight, recovered in spirit and ready to resume their burdens. T.M. Krishnaswamy Iyer, Volume 7, Arunachala Ramana. Ramana Ashramam is an oasis in the desert of the modern world. It is the life spring of love and life. May its waters take flood and submerge the world. May its mighty waves dash against the crude fortresses of racial arrogance and exclusiveness. May the depth of the spirit of forgiveness submerge the tall edifices of the courts of revenge. May the meditation of the great ones reshape a world of peace, love, and brotherhood. One word more. My sincere pranams and obeisance to the flame of Ramana Ashrama.